Agapiti Fili, Karimeri, Karispera, Potorentmont, Kekalos, AesCng, Coma.NET API Review. Yeah, that was scripted. One day I'll have it back in my head. Alright. No red. Yay! I like no red.
Are you intending to share something?
I was.
He was sharing his joy of language and of life.
Yes, that was well received.
Yes.
I mean, we're just at that fun state where the internet can see my screen, but you can't. So, yeah, the internet can see my screen. All right. Hello, internet. Okay. No red. Yay. So, looks like first up, we're revisiting add APIs to WebSocket, which allow it to be read as a stream.
Natalia had sent this one out via email because it was just a few tweaks to what we'd already approved. But we can go over it here if we like. Basically, oh yeah, there you go. Basically, it's requiring someone to specify when they're creating the stream. When you have a WebSocket and you send on it, you are required to specify a WebSocket message type, which is basically either binary or text. And the previous API, we were just sort of assuming we would always send binary, but this just promotes it to basically require you to specify it just like you have to specify it when you call send async. So it adds the WebSocket message type parameter. And then,
so how does that work actually with like the stream being binary and text being text if you specify text?
The same way it works with WebSocket, where you're still passing in a byte array or a read-only memory of byte. It basically, the bytes have to be UTF-8 bytes, and the receiving end, technically, according to the spec, is supposed to validate that they're valid UTF-8 bytes.
Does this API perform that validation automatically on your behalf, or is the caller responsible for doing it?
There's no validation performed on the sender side with WebSocket today or with this. There is validation performed on the receiving side by WebSocket and thus implicitly by this.
So if you put two sides, so say you took a client WebSocket and a server WebSocket, you wrapped them both in a stream with the text message type, and I sent binary data, like which side would catch it and where?
The receiving end would say this was invalid.
Even if I was reading it through a stream,
Yes.
it would still do that validation. Okay.
Yeah.
And I assume that's documented.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's below the stream layer. That's just the WebSocket saying I received a text packet that did not contain text. It is therefore an erroneous packet.
Right. I guess an interesting consequence of this would be that the bytes might be refragmented, restructured, whatever you want to call it, between the sender and the receiver.
So
but I guess that already happens today. Yeah.
Yeah, and the validation happens at the message level. So you can have multiple sends on a WebSocket that are all part of the same message, and it's not until the EOF of the message, which could be n number of packets later, that the receiving side says, okay, I've now completely received everything that I need to receive. Now I can validate that it's a fully formed UTF-8 thing. So if it only receives a part of a message, it's okay if it's part of a UTF-8 character.
I mean, will the stream still return that partial character to you, or does the stream actually hold on to it until it knows that it's valid?
It holds on to it. Again, and that happens at the WebSocket layer.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
And as the names of these types imply, right, this has no effect on how you read the socket. Like this is only changing what happens when you write.
This is purely about the write. We contemplated, do we need to also have it, like, do we want a stream that says I refuse to respond to any, if I read a valid text message, but I didn't want text, should I throw? We decided it wasn't worth, like, no one would care.
Remind me, can you mix text and binary frames in a single WebSocket?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I thought. So
But
if
they
that
have to be
happens,
different frames, though.
yeah, they'd be different frames. But if that happened, you're reading through the stream, you would just like there would be no
you would lose the information about
the bound.
the message. Like reading through a stream, there's no concept of framing, so
Right.
you don't know where one frame ends and where one frame begins, and you don't know whether that non-existent frame was binary or text.
And you're reading, if it is text, you're reading UTF-8 text, presumably not UTF-16,
Correct.
as it is on the wire. Yeah. Okay.
So then the other change was basically my initial proposal, or my initial revision of the proposal, basically had the WebSocket stream disposal being abortive, and that was deemed bad. So then it changed to being graceful, but graceful implies round trip communication with the other end, which means at some point you need to time out. And so there'd been an implicit timeout of some number of seconds, but to allow that to be configured when you create one of these, you can also specify what that timeout should be. So that's that closed timeout parameter that takes the place of the owns WebSocket parameter in the other overload, because if you're specifying a timeout, you implicitly own the socket.
And that timeout's not needed on the writable and readable message streams?
Right, because those are, when you close those, you're not closing the underlying socket. You're not unclosing the underlying WebSocket, you're just ending your frame.
So there owns WebSocket false.
Correct.
Okay.
So this only affects when you initiate the closing handshake via dispose, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I think it's fine. I was gonna maybe suggest dispose timeout, but I'm not sure I like that. I think close timeout.
For what it's worth, I preferred dispose timeout. Natalia was pretty adamant about close timeout, though.
Okay, like yeah. Again, I actually think I prefer close timeout, but I was thinking along those same lines.
Yeah, I preferred, for the parameters, I preferred using the well, it doesn't matter.
So if
there's a choice to make for these prop parameters about whether you use the stream nomenclature or you use the WebSocket nomenclature. So is the write socket message, the WebSocket message type, is that for write or is that for send? And then for close, stream arguably has both, although close is sort of a wart of history. But WebSocket uses close, so it's fine.
If the original proposal suggested that the write message type was not needed, should it be defaulted, or are you happy with it being a formal required parameter?
The argument, which I understand and respect, is that WebSocket requires you to specify it, and in fact, it has text as the default value, like text is value 0. Which I still don't understand why WebSocket includes text, I guess because it was primarily, and it came about as a browser protocol. But if I would definitely not want the default to be text, and having the default be binary is sort of counter to both WebSocket message types default and then having any default at all is sort of counter to WebSocket requiring you to specify it. So I think it's fine to just require it be specified and be explicit about it.
Can we? All right. I'll make the argument for binary. We know for MCP, people will want it in binary mode. Though, I mean, not many people will be writing that. But like stream in general is binary. Now, I get that you could be writing text to it, but at that point, you're like already converting it to UTF-8 and you're doing... It's a minor thing. It's like an extra parameter on a method, but I'm fine with defaulting it to binary. If it was my choice alone, I would probably do that.
I understand, but like Steve said, historically this has been used for text communication between browser and server, and if you default it to something other than what the protocol is historically meant for, you could potentially make it very confusing as to why the server and the client can't talk to each other. That said, you would immediately find that in testing. It's not like it would be a surprise to people.
Actually, I was assuming MCP would use binary. I haven't looked as much like the Python and TypeScript SDK do it. Do you know if they use binary?
I don't know.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if they use text since it's JSON.
Yeah,
obviously.
JSON. Yeah.
I was thinking about it more, and I'm like, that's not a given. Yeah. Okay.
I could
I'm
imagine
okay.
at
Natalia
some
did
point in the
some.
future. Yeah.
Natalia posted a whole bunch of long AI investigations later in this thread, and I think she discovered that a significant portion of the WebSocket-based protocols are textual. Although I don't think MCP was on the list.
Okay, I
'Cause
retract my
WebSocket is
position, though, thinking of it more. I think text is more common than I was giving it credit for, even with stream usage, probably.
But if all text does is make you say validate that it's UTF-8, it's really like validated and unvalidated at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. This has zero impact on what behavior the sender does, other than what bit is included in the packet.
It affects the clients, like the clients might break. Yeah.
It affects the receiving side.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's set text if you want someone to crash, and set binary if you don't.
Basically, but yeah, it's not as transparent as it is for us. Like, you have to like look, like, it's different code to read text and binary in like JavaScript. But okay. Another question, and I guess this gets in a little bit of the PR review, is like, if you have like a single span or byte array you pass to write async, is that guaranteed to always be in like the same frame?
The same WebSocket frame, yes.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious. Yeah,
in fact,
I'm fine not leaving it default. I wanted to default before, but I think it's like not as clear.
I accept Steve's. It's complicated,
So do I.
which I wrote in more words than it's complicated. I almost wrote it's complicated. All right, text is more appropriate default from a spec perspective. Binary is a more sensible default from a flexibility perspective. So let the user decide is the best answer, hence not a default.
Sounds good. Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve. All right. Add a constructor to AesCng accepting a CNG key. So when the original CNG types, CNG is Windows Cryptography Next Generation. We ignore that and just CNG is the name of a Windows library concept. So the original CNG types were only the asymmetric algorithms, RSA, DSA, and ECDSA, and they all in their constructors accept a CNG key. In, let's say, Framework 4.6, which, I don't know, is that Core 1, Core 2? We added AesCng because Windows added support for persisted AES keys, and we made things easier for people by only adding constructors that took the name of the key, and then we would open the CNG key reference for you. But this meant we took away some certain abilities for flags that you could pass to open. And so the suggested remediation on that is do what all the other types did and just accept an already open CNG key. In addition to the constructors we have that take the name and do the open for you.
For some reason, I thought we had actually obsoleted the AesCng type, but I guess not.
No, it's not obsolete. The specific case they want here is that the key has been whatever key guard does id. Windows Encrypt does support persisted AES keys. So.
Oh yeah.
And this is the only way to talk to them. You shouldn't you shouldn't use the type directly unless you're using it with an underlying key reference. Maybe that's what you're thinking of. It's like this constructor good, default constructor bad.
Yes, that must be what it was, because I remember we were trying to get people to use the abstract types rather than the concrete types like this. But yeah, like if you have an actual like encrypt handle, like okay, great.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like there's
and
no.
I assume we would validate and make sure that it actually is like an honest to God AES key.
Yeah, it's the same thing we do on all the other ones. It's
okay.
If you give an RSA key to this, it's going to blow up. So,
okay.
So now if we accept this one, I'll point out, and I don't care which way we feel, that now every type except triple des CNG that ends in CNG takes a CNG key as a constructor parameter. Should we go ahead and square it off while we're here, or should we say no one should be using triple des and we don't care?
I thought it was still commonly used in the payments industry.
It might be. Question is, does anybody care about key guard with triple des? But as I noted in the thing, just because we say we approve it here doesn't mean we actually have to write
it. I would really just like people to get off of triple des, honestly. So if we receive a request for it, I guess consider it, but don't proactively do it because maybe that sends the wrong signal.
That's fine. So hold off until there's a need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bloop.
Yeah, I know that there was an alternative API, an alternative proposal down at the bottom that considered a static constructor on the symmetric algorithm type.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily a fan of that.
Yeah.
Because I think that gets confusing when you have things like, well, what about an AES-CNG or AES-GCM key? I guess the CNG key doesn't say whether or not it's GCM, does it?
Correct.
Because it's just AES, and then you have to specify the mode of operation. Okay.
Yeah, I don't like that one because we've not invested in the factories for anything.
Well, that said, is it possible today to take a CNG key and to say like, well, I want to use GCM or CCM with this, because I don't see a way to do that using our current APIs.
I don't think so.
Do we need to consider that?
The Key Vault guys said this would satisfy their needs.
Because they're using like CBC or something?
Yeah, probably. I mean, they're using framework, so.
Yeah. I guess I'm just wondering if...
This is for them to modernize.
I'm wondering if we're missing like a second half of the scenario here. Because like we're allowing you to import an AES key, but we're closing off certain modes of operation to you. And I wonder if people would find that either surprising or insufficient to solve their scenarios.
Maybe. If somebody comes back with we need a constructor on AesCng, AesGCM that takes a CNG key, we can entertain one. I don't know if we can even plumb it through, but
is that something that we could? Would it ever make sense to tentatively approve that, but just not do it until someone asks for it?
I mean, sure.
That way, if someone does ask for it, you don't need to come back to review. Or am I just like jumping way ahead of myself here?
I think the fact that nobody's asked for it means we should wait and make sure it's actually going to solve a problem when we get there.
Okay.
Designing by committee for a feature nobody wants seems presumptive.
Okay, that's fair. As long as we recognize that somebody in the future might ask for this, and yeah, we can entertain it at that point.
All right, add RFC 5649 key wrap. 108332. Me again. Yeah, we've had a request for exposing RFC 5649's version of keywrap, not to be confused with RFC 3394's version of keywrap, which, just as a little bit of intro, OpenSSL added 3394 as crypto 128 wrap, because it's a 128-bit block algorithm, and then 5649 came about, and they're like, well, we have to name it differently, so we're going to shove the word pad on it, because that is the difference in the two titles, AES keywrap algorithm and AES keywrap with padding algorithm. And since it's only defined on 128-bit block algorithms, and AES is the only one of those, the proposal for .NET is to put it on the AES type as an instance, like we have all the encrypt and decrypt methods now not using iCrypto transform. And so this gives us two main blocks of methods: the wrapping side, which is all stable, predictable sizes. You pass the length into the helper, it tells you how long the output byte arrays would be, or exactly how many bytes it would write to the span. I'm looking at the wrong block. Encrypt. Encrypt is stable, so these byte arrays will always have a fixed size given the input, and the span writing one can be void of the give us the correct answer to prove that you know what you're doing. Decrypt is because it's padded, it removes the padding, therefore it's less stable. Any input has a 8-byte or a length of 8 bytes variation in what it could produce. So a 16-byte input produces an 8-byte output, and then 24 can go up to 16, etc. So it's always n minus 15 to n minus 8. Yeah, and then we need a pair of methods, something that applies the wrapping, or something that applies the key wrap and something that removes the key wrap. And honestly, every name we looked at feels terrible.
So it's a crypto API.
Yeah, so
Right.
the proposal, trying to keep words together that feel like they belong together, calls this encrypt and decrypt key wrap padded. Other names that have been used by me when writing it were extended key wrap and extended key unwrap, because even though the spec calls it padded, sections 4.1 and 4.2 called it extended instead of padded. And I was like, great, that makes an English sentence. So, yeah. We can go with the names here because they work, or there's like padded key wrap and unwrap, unwrap key padded and wrap key padded, unwrap padded key with wrap padded key. The verbs here really kind of should be wrap and unwrap, but using those actually makes it kind of feel worse. So.
Does it make sense to drop the whole padded suffix or infix and just put like wrap RFC 5649?
I was gonna say it doesn't make sense to drop padded,
Right.
But yeah, so we can. That was the section I removed. Yeah, I mean we could totally call it key wrap, or like wrap key RFC 5649. We have had a few places that we just literally have had no better answer for a thing than to shove an RFC number in it.
I mean, we've done it before with crypto APIs. It's just if it doesn't actually allow us to remove any of the other fixes from the API name, then maybe it's not worthwhile. Because then now it's just expanding it for the sake of expanding it.
Right. Well, Kevin pointed. So OpenSSL calls it key wrap pad, and then the registered OIDs for it call it wrap pad. So,
yeah,
pad is the name of the algorithm, for better or worse.
So can we remove the DED part of it and just call it wrap pad? Or is that just weird?
I mean, that feels to me like you're C and trying to squish your function names down.
Well, it's not necessarily that. It's that I'm wondering if padded implies that the caller has to take an operation ahead of time before calling this API, like that they need to mutate the input somehow.
Fair enough.
But again, this is what documentation is for, right?
Yep.
So, sorry, and I might not be following this completely, but one thing that I noticed is like, so we're supporting the new like 5649 key wrapping. Is that the idea of these APIs?
Yes.
Or not new, but like new to us.
Newer.
And,
yeah.
Yeah. But like, so do we need to do unpad for the like OpenSSL does, or like why? Like, I don't know. Are we unpadding instead of padding during like decryption?
Oh, I think I put the un in the wrong place. This was copy paste. This was copy paste. This was copy paste, and this is typing is faster.
Yeah, like I said, I could just be confused.
I think it's unwrap pad.
All right, I see.
I'll actually double check that. Where's your header file? Yeah, it's unwrap underscore pad, not wrap underscore unpad. So they took the two previous names and then put underscore pad on the end of them. Which makes sense.
Does AesCng have any names for this? Or like,
so AesCng wouldn't expose it because
it wouldn't.
it's not
Because it's not.
TLS.
Yeah, it's just doing.
Windows
or Windows APIs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because I have more privilege than the average human on the planet, I know that Windows has implemented this, but they've implemented it only as a detail. They've not exposed it as a public function. So there are things that you can pass into them that will make them use this algorithm, but they don't. You can't give them data and say, go apply this algorithm. So they didn't have to address the problem with naming because it's only an internal function. So really, we're looking for the least bad name.
I mean, what you have here is not terrible.
Yeah. So
it's just unfortunate.
Decrypt and encrypt, make them stack with the existing encrypt, CBC, etc. Changing it to using wrap and unwrap as prefixes makes it clear that they're different than just a key mode, which I kind of like. But then we need something like unwrap key padded or unwrap key RFC 5649.
Yeah.
So, but given a dearth of good names, this is just the original proposal. And then the static could maybe use some love. Lack of input suggests that what's the decrypt key wrap padded and encrypt key wrap padded are what's going to survive. But the static, yes, I think so. Kevin's proposal was get ciphertext length key wrap padded, and mine apparently was get key wrap padded length, which I admit doesn't tell you which direction it's going. So maybe get key wrap padded encrypted length, ciphertext length.
I don't think you need ciphertext on here.
Is there an API going the other way? From ciphertext to plaintext?
So the decrypts go from
For
ciphertext to
length.
plaintext.
Yeah, I think you need to fully decrypt it before you could even calculate that, right?
Yeah, so again, so the decrypt will always produce an output that is ciphertext.length minus 15 to ciphertext.length minus 8. So that's the range it can produce. Anything other than that would throw an exception, because it will fail its length consistency check. So 1 byte turns to 16, 8 bytes turns to 16, 9 bytes turns to 24. Have fun with math. So the forward is this is the exact length. You put in this plain text. This will be the length of this array, which is why the encrypt or the positive wrapping side is a void returning span writing thing, which is prove that you know what you're doing by passing in a thing that is the exact right length, which we've done in a couple other crypto algorithms. I don't know how I feel about it, but at least it's consistent. But the other one, all we could do is give back a range, and a range means we either have to give a range or a tuple. And
yeah, I mean, I hope to never call this API, so I'm probably not the audience. But like, to me, putting encrypted or ciphertext in there seems logical. But you can also put it in the doc comments, and these names are already long, and it's probably fine.
Yeah. As long as the doc comments are accurate, and the method names generally reflect what the RFC says, then I think people are going to be successful with this API. Because given that it's a crypto API, like, we already expect that people understand the problem domain that's being addressed here. And if they know exactly what scenario they're trying to tackle, then it's literally just a question of read the documents and kind of map the method names back to the scenario. So I don't think that's a terrible thing. Because ideally we would include things like plain text and ciphertext in the name, but A, like, is it adding anything here? Probably not. And B, are people likely to confuse ciphertext with another concept? And the answer is possibly.
Yeah. I mean, a little bit of it is covered in the asymmetry of the decrypt gets the try because it could fit in a small buffer, and it might not. And then the encrypt gets a nope, get it right, or go home. So this tells you what right is.
Yeah, and the parameter name tells you, and like what you end up passing in code that works will kind of tell you. So I think it's okay.
All right, so we're sticking with, I'll say what was originally proposed, but by which I mean what I added it to look like at 10:02. So this.
Yeah.
All right.
And because it can't, because you can't wrap an empty buffer, then we don't need to do any type of clever like null or empty checks on the span parameters, right?
Correct. So
Okay. Thank God.
Zero plain text is forbidden. So plain text must be a minimum of 1 byte, and then, which sadly means this thing throws on 0 as well as negative. And then the ciphertext gets pre-validated. It must be a minimum of 16 bytes and must be a multiple of 8.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Remind me, how many rounds is a key wrapping operation?
Depends on how long your input is.
Okay.
If your input is 1 to 8 bytes, then 1. And if it's beyond that, then either 6 or 7, because I don't remember if the J loop starts at 0 or 1.
Okay. But it's no more than 7-ish, regardless of input.
It's no more than 7 rounds, but rounds are done per adjacent blocks of 64 bits. Um, it's it's a fair number of calls to the underlying encryption operation, but you're only supposed to use it to send keys, so you're not supposed to care.
Yeah, you expect small inputs, yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Oh, and then, yes, there were some notes of... There was a question of, do we need to backport this? And with this structure, I think we can polyfill it for backport if it comes up. But we're not going to do that at this time.
Yes, the
Everything
problem that I'm
static.
seeing... Yeah, the problem that I'm seeing, I think, is that the last API that we reviewed was ingesting CNG keys. I suspect that if you're using key wrap, you probably have a CNG key as your KEK.
Yeah.
And then the scenario is busted and can't be polyfilled.
Right. I think that the people who are asking for this the strongest are the same people who wanted that new constructor, so they're not going to care on older versions.
Right. Okay.
But Barry had said, backport to 8 question mark? And I said, no. All right. So this is a fun one. This is a pull request. Add obsolete attribute and editor browsable never to dynamic dependency.condition. So this is a PR that was opened in 2024 that Steve tried cleaning up recently, as in getting out of our unresolved state, and they want to slap some obsolete and EB nevers on a few properties. Do you know more than that to say, Steve, or do we just read the words on the PR?
Jackson's here, or at least he's showing up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have too many layers of things. So.
No worries. Yeah, this is just I was looking at implementing some stuff in the linker and found the tests around this and didn't see anything like any support code for it. Like we just don't support it. This property in the linker. So like it doesn't have any impact anymore. So it doesn't make sense to set. So I figured we should hide it, I guess, from users.
And Jackson, we're not aware of anyone else other than our own tools in .NET looking at these attributes.
Right. Yeah, I did a GitHub search for all the public code, and there's one test in the linker project that references this.
Okay. Out of curiosity, what was the intent of this property?
It was supposed to kind of work like feature, not feature flags, feature, yeah, I guess feature flags. I can't think of the right word. But if the condition is not met, then we don't keep the dependency. We ended up doing feature flags in a different way, so we shouldn't need this anymore.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we feel that it needs a distinct code, or is the generic obsolete fine for a thing that probably no one ever read?
If we think literally no one is using it anywhere other than one of our own tests, I don't think we need to invest more effort in giving it a unique ID.
Yeah. Well, unique IDs we normally use in order to like wean people off of something where there's a replacement, right? Or where we need to start deprecating something, like where we need to wind something down. Like this is already wound down, right?
Yeah, I mean the general idea
literally
behind
no one honors us.
Behind the distinct diagnostic code is so that you could say, I know I'm dealing with this particular piece of crufty tech. Stop yelling at me, but warn me about other crufty tech. And I can agree that no one.
resolution here is delete your code.
Yeah, I can agree that no one would be using this, but I think that since we introduced custom diagnostics, we've not let something go out as 0618, and I'm just making sure we're happy with that. I think it's
I think
fine.
most of the things that we've marked as obsolete, as Levi said, like we were pushing people to other things because we assumed that people were actually using it and we didn't want them using it anymore. This we're assuming that literally no one is using.
Oh wait, I can do a weird thing.
The only other reason that I'm aware of that we've used different diagnostic codes is so that we can make it a configurable error instead of just always error or always warning, but I don't think that would qualify here.
Yeah, I mean, this would be always warning because it doesn't say true.
Yeah. It would be useful, though, I think, to write down, Jeremy, like you were getting at, like, what is our stance on when we should be using unique diagnostic codes versus not? Like, are there situations like this where it's just not worth the effort?
Yeah, I mean, I think our stance is probably always use a diagnostic code unless it feels stupid, and this one I think we think feels stupid.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's a very coarse approximation of the rule.
I mean, it's a good approximation, though.
Yep. Oh, maybe I should change the tags. All right, there we go. Our first ever, I think, PR with an API approved label. All right. Thank you, Jackson.
Thank you.
All right, and a late entry for 10. The combination of ML-DSA and our COSE library. This is proposal 116942. So we already have the COSE. Where's the sign method on this? Oh, right. So we already have. So COSE is CBOR object signing and encryption. It's yet another message format of conveying signatures of data and/or the data. And we want to add new post-quantum algorithms into it. ML-DSA is just being the first one to get there. Generally, we've been conveying the abstraction via the COSE signer type to do the input. The first constructor parameter is an asymmetric algorithm. What key do you want to sign with? And then you have all the other stuff. But our new key types don't extend asymmetric algorithms, so they can't reuse that constructor. And then we can also look at how we verify an existing message, where we get, similarly, we made verify that took asymmetric algorithm and said we can figure out what type it needs to be from context, but the new keys don't extend asymmetric algorithm. So our choices really felt like switch to iDisposable and let things go crazy, switch to object and let things go crazy, or add this many overloads per key type we want to add to COSE in the future. Instead of that, the proposal is we introduce a new type called COSE key, which is this type's notion of what's the data that I need when you give me a key. So that's this top segment. If you give an ECDSA key, you have to pair it with a hash algorithm. If you give an RSA key, you have to pair it with a signature padding and a hash algorithm. And an ML-DSA key needs no further context. Then the verifies on both signature message types get updated to take that in lieu of asymmetric algorithm, and COSE signer gets augmented to take one instead of asymmetric algorithm. This does leave a nullability problem of COSE signer says I always have an asymmetric algorithm, or a key which is an asymmetric algorithm, but if you give a COSE key instead of an asymmetric algorithm, then now you won't. We also don't propose exposing the COSE key property because the good name's already taken. And we don't know why anyone would read it. We only exposed it back out because we took it in a constructor parameter. Why not expose it?
Yeah, that was actually going to be my first question. Like, does the COSE key type itself need to expose the arguments passed in? And I think you believe the answer is no.
No, until someone tells us why.
Yeah.
One of the things we've been finding with the PQC project is we've done overexposure to the point that it's a detrimental. In particular, so it's if all the new types did continue extending asymmetric algorithm, it would have been fine. But really, we exposed things using a base class because someone had invented a base class, and once we realized the base class was truly worthless, then it was like, oh man, this is just in our way.
So honestly, I do like the COSE key concept because it's also a concept that that we've used in ASP.NET before to basically say, look, you can pass arbitrary algorithmic data in here, and at least we give you a single projection that can be passed anywhere in the system, even if the particular data that you're passing into us like has different representations that don't necessarily have a useful abstraction underlying them. So I do like that. Like you said, you can always add stuff in the future if needed.
Yep. Yeah, I think one of the questions on this one, and I didn't have the time to do good research, is do we have places that we use an implicit create verb, as in just a static method named from?
The thing is, you're not creating though, right? You're just kind of wrapping some data into a glorified tuple.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
That's a lot of create methods.
Yeah.
Because this is the static method in lieu of a constructor, and so
I mean,
the
it's
static
not a
method in lieu
verb,
of a
that's the
constructor
problem.
is usually named create,
Yeah.
and this
the
is
fact
just
that it's not a verb is a problem
Right.
a little bit. But
right. There is a
So
verb.
what-
It's create. It's just implicit, and
But
so I
why
don't know
not
if we
just
wanna-
use a constructor though? Like, why aren't you literally constructing a COSE key, just like you're constructing a COSE signer at the very bottom?
Yes. I think there was a point in the middle where COSE key was going to have a asymmetric algorithm constructor for easy compatibility, but then we broke it apart into the methods, or into the typed methods, and now they could all just be constructors.
Yeah, I think making it a constructor would make it more consistent with the other types in this namespace. And it avoids the naming problem that you just mentioned. And it's more discoverable for people.
Yeah, I think the constructor probably makes sense. So if we decided to add a constructor to COSE key that took an asymmetric algorithm, what would be wrong with that? Like, not saying we should, because I mean we already have the other constructors for COSE signer, so whatever. But I just wondering why that made you use the factory method instead of the constructor.
I don't remember. Like, this is one of those things of it made sense in, because I mean, part of this is already checked in as part of can we make it even work, and it made sense in the evolution of the feature. But now that it's done, I agree it should just be a constructor.
Good call out.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, you don't need an asymmetric algorithm constructor anyway because you have both ECDSA and RSA. And like they take parameters that are specific to those types of algorithms.
Yeah.
You're just like adding unnecessary indirection, is like what you're saying.
It's not necessarily that, but it's the reason that I don't like just taking symmetric algorithm and asymmetric algorithm in general, because it gives callers a false impression of what agility is. Like
when you end up special casing certain algorithms anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you always need to special case them. So
yeah.
like you always are going to have a giant switch statement or something. So having having a single base class for everything is kind of useless anyway.
Yeah, I mean it kind of worked for verify,
Yeah.
and because the document would tell you what kind of thing the key needed to be, and then taking asymmetric algorithm was just like, whatever, give me a thing, and if I can match it, I'll match it, and if I can't, then false.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be useful if there was a bunch of different APIs that took the same set of algorithms, right? Like that could then in theory be useful. But yeah, I see the point.
Yeah, because I was also trying to figure out, like, can COSE key be, you know, genericified? But I don't think it can, because the algorithms that are supported by COSE might be different than the algorithms supported by some other random higher level crypto concept.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and so one of the things that came up when we were designing this is like, why don't we necessarily need this in other places? So for Sign CMS, we do have CMS Signer, which this was able to get by. Like, all we would have had to do to add ML-DSA is add a constructor that takes ML-DSA, right? But Sign CMS uses certificates, so when we get to verify, you get to verify it with a certificate. The certificate is already an indirection container for what kind of key are you trying to give me. And so the fact that COSE did away with the certificate layer is why we basically get to introduce this in lieu of a certificate. It's also a little bit better because it lets you filter better. But yeah.
Yeah, the more I think on this, the more I like it. I think it is the right layering.
Okay.
So approve as is with the from keys as constructors.
Yeah. So there is. I did notice while copying this out of the ref CS and putting it into the proposal that drag this over. So the verifies Christoph didn't override the ones that take arrays. So he didn't overload the array taking ones to take COSE key. He just went with the span ones are functionally equivalent. I think Kevin was recently playing with PowerShell and saw that PowerShell like explodes if it touches span API. So it's one of the reasons that we still use bytes. Arrays overloads for things that take spans. Do we care to say that we should just go ahead and overload the array ones too for consistency? Or do we want to say we're span only people? I know we ask this question every year, and we always decide the array one, but I'm going to ask it again.
With these APIs, the fact that empty has meaning always kind of scares me a bit. So array at least avoids that problem.
Wait, so default versus like, so null just being invalid versus, so you would just rather like it being, because you can still use the span API, right? Like adding the array API doesn't get rid of the span API. So what's the issue?
Right. So for the verify detached is null is invalid for the content, but it is valid for associated data.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't like that changing asymmetric algorithm or to COSE key means that now a null no longer gets caught, then sure, we can overload.
I think it helps people catch usage errors.
I see. So because the null gets implicitly converted into default and not rejected is like the argument.
Well, null and empty are sometimes actually treated distinctly in the crypto stack. Like they actually have different meanings sometimes, and it's kind of annoying.
Right, but like I guess my point is we're offering the span API either way. But this is for people who are just like converting maybe existing code that might have some. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you have, I think most callers are working with arrays rather than spans. And if they're working with arrays and you're calling an overload that takes an array without going through an implicit conversion to span, I think people are less likely to run into these types of ambiguities. The code, the behavior that they observe is more in line with what they intend in these edge cases, I believe.
I see. But in this particular case, okay, an empty span is valid.
Yeah.
Okay.
But do you have an empty span because a null array got implicitly converted to an empty span?
No,
or do you have an empty span because an empty array got implicitly converted?
No,
to
I
an
get
empty
it.
span?
No, the implicit conversion does make it like a little more like this could catch people in, you know, save them errors, I guess, in
Yeah.
new development.
Okay, so I'll sprinkle in the. It looks like the stream ones only use span and memory, but they have the they're only in associated data, which is allowed to be null. So it's really just the ones taking detached content.
Too bad, Levi. I was hoping like we could try it because, like, you know, it's always something we could add later, and we
I
probably
mean, you could try it.
But
You could absolutely
Well-
try it. If you, by the way, if you add it later, you are in fact changing how call sites are bound.
Yeah, and
exactly what you said.
Adding
it
it-
would
Yeah.
take something that
adding it later
might
is a
have-
breaking change.
Right, in exactly that scenario. If someone actually wanted null to be treated as empty content, which do we consider that a breaking change? Mind you, you have to recompile. And like, do you really think that's what people intend if that were to happen? But yeah.
Yeah, it's just a weirdly unfortunate edge case for these APIs.
Yeah, I'm okay if, you know, we don't want to start on the span only on the crypto APIs. Or this crypto API.
Okay, so we changed the static factories into constructors, and we added the 2 missing overloads. And everybody acknowledges that we need to change the nullability of this property, and that because
Yeah.
no one uses this package at all, it's fine.
Yeah.
Have we taken nullable of span in like any crypto APIs? Because like to your point, like it could make sense, right? In some cases, null and empty are distinct. Or is null usually
You
just in our
can't
case?
do nullable
Yeah.
of span of T.
Nullable does not allow ref struct.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. Even if it did in VNext, I believe this is a net standard targeting package, right?
Because that's true. Because like that would be a non-breaking change to nullable. Because we've been doing that in a bunch of places. Yeah. All right.
So what you have highlighted on the screen right now is a breaking change. I guess it would have to go through like the breaking change notification stuff, but I can't imagine anyone would protest.
Yeah, especially because I think this is the least downloaded package in all of .NET.
Sorry, I missed it. Asymmetric algorithm is a class, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the break you're talking about is just the
That
compile time break, not binary.
that now
Yeah,
you
the
can
nullability break.
that now you can
Yeah.
observe that it's null.
That's fine.
Yeah, these are some of the lowest numbers I've seen for anything on NuGet.
I assume, by the way, that the breaking change guidelines that we have actually calls that out as a breaking change, going from non-nullable to nullable.
Yeah, somewhere we talk about it as a source breaking change. I don't know exactly if it's in our breaking change doc or if it's in our nullability information.
Okay.
.NET 10, we might get more usage with passkeys. This is cozy, right? Or not cozy. Maybe not. Just kidding.
That is why we added it, actually.
Yeah.
Because the cozy key,
Right.
the nullability change. Okay. The cozy key data format was being used, I think, for passkeys, and so now that we have this new type, if somebody cares for us to import and export in that format, this would be where we would put it. But that is why we added the CBOR data models years ago.
Right, we're definitely
I came
using
up
the
with Black
C
Hat, so
stuff.
it means it was pre-pandemic because I haven't been since the pandemic. So yes, we've had this for like 6 years, waiting on, I guess, you guys to want to use it.
Well, it's good because, yeah, it's nice when it's available.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I should actually mark it approved. No. Control bar, go away, please. Thank you. All right. As soon as this refreshes, everything that's left is now marked as future. So I'll take suggestions.
The parsable and on IP endpoint should be an easy one.
Okay.
So as we've done with other types, including some of the ones in networking, I think we did IP address last year. It's desirable to just implement the iSpan formatable and IUTF-8 span formatable and span parsable interfaces on the type so that they can be used in more contexts. It's been requested that we do the same thing on IP endpoint.
Okay. And looking here, I believe the pattern is when the iFormat provider doesn't make sense, this is what we do. If we explicitly implement that you can call it from the interface, but we don't put it as public on the type to tell you that it doesn't matter.
Right.
It must already have a toString. Aside from the typo right there, seems fine to me.
Are there any of them that we'd want to promote to public? I guess some of them are.
Yeah.
Like try format. Okay.
Yeah, the ones that don't take the iFormat provider should be public here, since those ones we want public, but the ones that take iFormat provider, like Jeremy said, there's nothing the type uses with it, so exposing it to the user on the main type makes them think that it might do something when it doesn't.
Got it. All right. Seems pretty straightforward then, other than that decision, which ones to make public.
I'll leave out the snark. But I fixed it. Okay. 48 minutes of rain. Taking all bets.
The very bottom of the list, fake time provider adds a bool. I don't dare jinx it by estimating how long it will be, but it is a single property. I like it. I presume the only reason we have to add this property, I just was reading it because I was like reading ahead since you're asking for issues, is because, you know, it's technically breaking to accept more inputs.
What do we do today if you set it to an older time? We throw?
Okay, so that's the assumption I'm making. Yeah, that is what I assume, but I haven't verified that.
Yep.
I would be tempted to just like stop throwing.
I was going to
Also.
say, we generally don't consider it a break to go from throwing argument exceptions to not. If we can just make that scenario work, I'd rather do that than add another property.
Yeah, let's try that then. It's kind of interesting that we did prevent that, considering it's a thing that can definitely happen with like real system clocks. But anyway.
So, yeah, it seems the question that went to you, Steve, and just making sure you still believe it's true, is that any timers that are being fed by the fake time provider, that they're not going to break because the clock moves backwards.
I mean, the only real timer we have can't be controlled by time provider. It's the system timer. So
okay. If the fake time provider is only when people ask for it and there's not a go create a timer using a time provider, then sure.
I mean, there is, but like it's mostly used for like testing. And again, the real system clock could move back. So if someone wanted to like implement their own real system clock, like using fake timer or fake time provider, then go crazy. I'm reading more about this, and I guess we added an experimental adjust time method that takes a delta already, and that can go negative. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm with Tobe and just removing that argument exception, and probably this experimental flag while we're at it.
Yeah, is there any plan for this to come out of experimental?
I would hope so. I mean, I'm very against things that sit experimental forever. Either they're good and we keep them, or they're bad and we delete them.
I mean, and this is even more reason to like not add the property, right? Because like, are we going to start throwing from here if we add this property and you didn't set it? Like, probably not.
Yeah.
Because this will be the third release that this type is in.
Fake time provider.
Or more than that, it ships monthly, right?
I guess, yeah. I guess I was talking major release, but yeah.
Sure.
But no, I agree with you though. Like, just
easy it would be.
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
I agree with you. Just make the scenario work. No need to make someone set a property.
Yeah, the API cat can't find its approval issue. I was just looking to see.
It was added and we never discussed it.
Or just the scanner didn't identify the comment correctly is also a reasonable reason. I was looking to see if we had the discussion of why it was going in as experimental. Issues. See if I can find it the manual way.
Yeah, it looks like it was part of a mass commit in May 2023, and I can't easily look beyond that.
The PR for adjust times here, like, it links to this very issue. That's how I was able to find it. But yeah, there's not much conversation about like API review. They just labeled it experimental probably because it didn't go through API.
Oh, you know what? Because it came from R9.
Yeah, I mean, probably. It is
yes.
that. Yeah. It's
yes,
Martin.
I think everything that came from that repo was just mass marked as experimental. Yep.
Fair enough.
That's exactly what it was.
I mean, I don't I don't see or API cat doesn't see the approval for the class either, and it's not marked as experimental. So this must have just been.
I
Because
remember
it was
talking about
being added
fake
as
time provider in API
So
review.
is the adjust time? Was adjust time added to not break set UTC now? Is that?
Apparently, yeah. I guess people are afraid of removing the argument exception, which, like, I don't understand, to be honest.
Then I think we should nuke adjust time and just use set UTC now.
I mean, I don't hate adjust time. Why do we have to?
But we already. What's
Oh,
the
is
difference?
this? Oh, sorry. I thought I didn't read it. The implementation. I thought is it not the delta?
Yeah, adjust is plus equals and set is equals.
No,
No,
they're computing
set-
a delta. Yeah, that's
Oh, wait.
unfortunate.
Adjust time is setting. You can't plus equals a date time offset to a
Oh,
date time
yeah.
offset.
Yeah. So, like, the reason.
But I saw
Okay, so-
subtraction in here, so.
All right, so I'll explain some of this. So I think the reason for the argument exception is at least when you move forward in time, right? It does try to fire your timer callbacks and stuff, and it obviously won't do that kind of thing when moving backwards in time. But that's like also true if the system clock changes. So it's like a little bit of an inconsistency because like if the system clock jumps forward, your timers wouldn't jump or wouldn't fire either.
I don't
So,
think is it an inconsistency? If I move forward but not to the point of the next thing firing, then it also won't fire.
I guess, yeah, I'm fine removing the argument exception, but to like steal art, man, why it might exist is like set time is, you know, in this fake time provider or set UTC now is supposed to like pretend that you just went through time very quickly. You know what I mean? So like if your timer callback should have ran 100 times in that time frame, I think it does. And that's not true if you were to like change your system clock, right? And like,
Wait, so-
you know, in control panel.
So you're saying adjust time doesn't wake waiters?
No, adjust time does.
No, adjust
Oh,
time.
no, it doesn't. It's bumping all of the waiters forward.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, adjust time is don't fire any of the waiters, but
Right.
change what now means, and set.
That's not what I was. Oh, sorry, but that's not what set UTC now does, right? Like set
So
UTC
they
now
are
does
fundamentally different. They're
Yeah.
fundamentally different with regards to the waiters.
right. So in this case, we'd be making them the same for going backwards, but we could just mark this API not experimental as well.
What does this do if wake up time goes negative?
Presumably not fire timers, since -1's its default. Unless -1 means fire immediately. I think if it goes negative, it fires immediately.
I think the easiest thing to do would be to just remove the experimental flag from adjust time, because like it never calls callbacks. Now, whether or not there's a bug here, I don't know, but yeah, at first I was thinking it took the delta as the argument, but it takes the same argument as set UTC now. I guess the difference is twofold. It allows it to go backwards, and it doesn't call the timers, is what it seems to be.
They both allow it to go. Oh no, set doesn't. Set throws.
Right. Well, that's what this is all about, right? Is the proposed bool would make set not throw, but this was proposed before the adjust timer thing, right? Like the adjust timer was in reaction to this, or adjust time. So like that might be good enough, honestly, for this use case. We already shipped it experimentally. I think we could also just keep adjust time and also basically have set UTC now do what adjust time does when it goes backwards.
All right. So we're saying no, just remove the exception. Also, whoever's removing the exception, figure out what you want to do with adjust time.
I mean, we should probably make a decision on adjust time, right? Like whether or not we want to remove the experimental attribute or delete it. Adjust time still does something that set UTC now wouldn't do, even after we remove this argument exception, which is allow you to move the clock forward without waking anyone, which is a thing that could really happen, right? With like a real system clock. So it does add additional functionality.
Adjust time, I think the difference is adjust time only fires once.
It doesn't call wake timers at all.
Right. So the next iteration, or the next thing that causes waiters to wake, we'll see a bunch of waiters are now overdue.
No, because that's why it updates the wake up time on all the waiters. Now, whether that's correct, like maybe there's a bug, but like it's trying to make it as if, right? So like I think the mental model, right, for all of us here is like adjust time is as if you went into control panel and changed the time. That's what that does. And like set UTC now will never do that because it wakes timers when you move forward. So it is different, unique functionality that this provides. So I don't necessarily want to just delete it. I'm fine removing the argument exception.
Yeah. Okay. I see it now. Adjust time kicks all the timers to pretend that the clock didn't change, but lets the clock change, and the other one is go forward and backward in time instead of simply adjust the clock.
And like going backwards in time, right, is not something that's physically possible. So like that's why we threw an exception before. I think it's fine to be like, yeah, it's the same as adjust time if you go backwards. I think that's also fine. And we should remove the experimental.
Yeah, I mean, if this was being designed instead of checked in, I would think that one of them would be set time and the other would be advanced time, and advanced time would do all the fire and fire again and fire again and fire again, and set time would just be like setting the clock, like, okay, this is the time now.
I think we did I think we reviewed fake time provider before, but regardless, like we should set UTC now, not experimentally. I agree that should could probably have a better name, but too late.
The only thing I see in fake time provider at all in issues is a comment in some other. It's a usage for a rate limiter test. So, because I'm looking at open proposals. I'm smart. So this one defines time provider. Yeah, I just got the API cat couldn't find an issue that approved time provider, or rather fake time provider.
Yeah, I mean, maybe my memory is wrong. I don't have like the link right here, but
yeah, we did do time provider
for sure,
but like that doesn't say override.
Regardless, right? Like it should.
Indeed. I think it somehow just got it happened instead of it got reviewed.
Yeah, you might be right.
Oh, this may be the frustrating GitHub wants to load comments from the front, and I want it to load them from the end. And since this issue has 160 comments in it, it's hard to find. But anyway, are we having an actual opinion on the adjust time here, or are we saying that it's up to the owner to figure out what they want to do?
I think we should remove experimental from adjust time and also remove the argument exception from set UTC now and have it behave as adjust time when it moves negative. You could even call it to it. Like,
yeah, I agree.
Okay, on the, I mean, yeah, the API cat won't show how many package versions ago it was introduced. I just know that it's available to Net 8, which sort of suggests it was added in Net 8, but that could be wrong. I guess source code history knows. I'm just trying to make sure we're not saying take something out of experimental that was added like a week ago.
no, I linked to the PR earlier. It was like, it was released at least a year ago.
Okay.
May 31st, 2024. It's merged.
So that means it shipped in 9.
Yep.
Wonder how many other experimental things have been sitting around for a long time.
Seems like something we could easily run a query on.
Yeah.
So we're turning this into approving the exact opposite of what it asked for. Okay.
And I think we should actually call out that we expect set time UTC and adjust time to do the same thing with negative values. Or not negative values, but in the past, you get the point.
So you think it should just defer to adjust time?
Correct, but only for going backwards.
Yeah. So set time UTC going forward fires the timers a bunch, and then going backwards calls adjust time. Well,
Yep.
That's an answer.
Started off just adding one property, ended with removing one attribute. Still took a lot of discussion, but I like we're into that.
How's that in fundamentals?
Are you suggesting something more fundamental than time?
Oh, because this is a different repository. Okay.
Thanks, Hawking.
No wonder I can't find things. All right. Approved as opposite of what it asked for. Okay. Um, 25 minutes. Sequence reader?
The load and replicate to vector for SVE I can do. It's 3 from the
Search.
bottom.
Yeah.
This one's pretty straightforward. One of the SVE APIs that wasn't exposed was load and replicate to vector. We have the equivalent API on advanced SIMD already. That one notably just takes an address. It doesn't also take the control. For the SVE, the control acts as a scaled offset dependent on the type. It's not quite the same as an index. Control is the standard word we use there. And it supports the entire set of T that vector normally supports.
Is this an API off of vector or T?
No, this should be on SVE.
Okay.
System runtimes intrinsic ARM SVE.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
I had guessed generic vector. Sorry, the non-generic vector. But I guess it's true. This is taking pointers, which means it's more likely to be intrinsics.
I see. So you're suggesting, what is that, 9 or 10 overloads? Okay.
Yeah, the 8 integer primitive types plus the 2 floating point types.
And is replicate. Looks like we have load and replicate to vector is already a thing we have. But the existing ones say the size, and this one is just, I guess it's
Right,
whatever size vector of T is.
Correct.
Okay.
So the other ones are explicitly vector 128, 256, etc. These ones are the agnostic vector.
Of however big your CPU thinks a good size is.
Yep.
Is the comment just the various assembly instructions to load the various sizes? Is that?
Yeah, the with the ARM 64 intrinsics, the ARM folks created a tool to help generate the signatures automatically, because they found that the proposals were hitting the GitHub comment length limits. And so the format that they had done was, and to help expedite review, was they basically did this to specify what the instructions were and what the types were without having to, declare 200 characters times 10 for each API set we're trying to expose.
Very nice.
Enjoy your spec sharp. Okay. Doing a good job of burning down future.
I am not prepped today for the other SVE issues, so I will let someone else take a go.
Okay. Does anybody know these sequence reader ones, or equality compare create, or filtering logic for a fake logger?
I could probably speak to equality compare .create, not necessarily advocate for, but represent. So we added an equality compare .create overload a couple releases ago, and here someone wants the ability to basically create a comparer for a subproperty of a type. So basically you want to create a comparer for T that compares it on by basically comparing something hanging off of the T. So if I had a person and I had a compare for string and I wanted to create basically a compare that when accepting a person, it would compare the names of those people. Which you could do today by basically having the compare that accepts the two people to compare and then running a compare over each of their names. And this is trying to make that, but I guess as the implementation here is showing on the screen. Yeah.
But you say you do not advocate for it. Are you
I am
opposed, or are you just
ambivalent.
extremely neutral?
There are a large number of these kinds of things that one could possibly do. I'm not sure why this one is so important as to raise, the effectively one-liner at the bottom there, to be a new API. But if people think that it's really common, then sure.
Looking at Eric's response here. I can see a use case for it. Like you said, you have a person object and you just want to compare on the name, and it's nice not to have to write the boilerplate.
Because I agree that the pair of lines of code here, modulo var, look nicer than this. The question is, do enough people use it that we care?
I like it. I'll speak in support of it. Like, I think it's useful in like link APIs, right, where you have like key selectors already. Like, it's a thing that comes up a lot.
I don't like the idea of having the key comparer parameter defaulted to null. Because like you're calling equality comparer dot create, like you're already going down a path where you are wanting to be explicit. So why would we start defaulting things for you? Like, that just strikes me as a bit odd.
For the key comparer?
For the key comparer, yeah, not the key selector.
Man, I there's a conversation about this in the comments, but I think I agree with the proposer who's like, isn't the point of this to be convenient? Like, most of the time, like in that example you propose, where you're just like, I mean, a lot of the time the default key compare is going to be fine. I won't say most, but
well, like except for string, the default key comparer for string is horrible.
I mean, you could have opinions that if T key is string, that you want to pick something else, but
I mean, it depends, right? Like, if the string represented like a GUID you got from someone else or something, like, is it that bad? Why is the default string key compare so bad, actually?
Culture sensitive.
Because it's culture sensitive. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously in all our code we generally use ordinal or ordinal ignore case. But
Oh, actually, I take that back. I'm talking compare of T, not equality compare. They have different behavior. I take that back. Never mind.
oh, good. The equality compare has the better like
The
ordinal.
equality compare is correct. The compare of T is the
Okay.
third one.
So I equality
Yes.
compare is ordinal, like we would
Yes,
hope.
correct.
Okay.
By default, yes. Okay.
Good.
Okay.
I think it should be defaulted then for sure.
So that's if you give it just a key selector. So if this just said, in fact, if it says what it says right here, since that closes the create expression. But if you say that you want a quality comparer of item dot create item to item path, then that will now use a quality comparer of string dot default, which is ordinal.
Right.
And so then you would say go compare, make a hash set of items having a distinct path. So that would be equivalent to the SQL select items where, or comma distinct path, or whatever.
And it's like relatively easy to get a string compare, right? Like,
Yeah.
like if you had needed like an interlong compare, I'm guessing it's not that hard, but it's something I never do, right? Because it's usually default.
So the other question I would have then would be if we're doing this on equality compare, are we also doing it on compare? Even though they're not asking for it, it seems like the natural thing to do because they're twin APIs, right?
Sorry, I thought that's what Eric had addressed down here.
That.
Well, I mean,
No, I meant compare of T. I don't think Eric was talking about compare of T.
Yeah, he added the I equality compare. It looks like the original, or suggested the addition of the key compare. I mean, probably, but then would we not default to key compare in that case since it has the bad string?
As long as equality compare does not implicitly pull in a comparer, nor vice versa, my concerns are somewhat alleviated.
meaning you're fine defaulting it as long as you don't cross universes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which also means on compare, I would be fine defaulting it as well, as long as that doesn't implicitly pull in an equality comparer, because the universes create weird things sometimes when you cross them.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Like, if we have so many BCL APIs that already default to the current culture for comparison, then like if it's in that part of the API, might as well stay consistent.
I mean, we can approve it. We can also leave the note of we're not sure the feature's justified, and then that's just up to Eric to decide. But if he was here saying,
Sure.
"Oh, it's absolutely critical," would we approve it or not?
I see.
Trying to address Steve's ambivalence.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent too, but if the subject matter expert believes that it's important enough to put in, like, I would defer to them.
All right, and then comparer has no interface. It does have an interface. It has I compare of T.
Yeah.
equality comparer and comparer. Each. The type is generic because that's what we've done on the previous ones. So you'll still have to specify the t explicitly before calling create. You can infer the generic argument of t key based on the key selector and the key comparer. And I typoed the bottom one.
Yeah, that should work.
And we're doing it symmetrically for both.
And the
I think technically, oh, sorry. I mean, technically, create takes t and t key as like a generic parameter, right?
Well, as a generic type parameter of t and a generic method parameter of t key.
Okay, I'm just being silly. Okay, my bad.
Is our behavior that if the key selector returns null, we don't invoke the key comparer?
Well, the key comparer is described as accepting null, isn't it?
Yeah, then
I mean,
I think
just...
the signature needs to take a nullable T key then. Oh, no, sorry, that's not a delegate. That's iEquality comparer. Never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, did I miss?
I thought you were doing a delegate signature.
Did I miss some?
No, you're good.
iEquality comparer of t key question. Like, is there two question marks here?
No, I thought you were defining the delegate in the second parameter, not the actual equality comparer instance.
Right, but the
I
equality.
got mistaken.
I guess I don't know what the equality comparer. This is what happens when people don't write good proposals and I have to fix them.
The proposal's acceptable.
It's
He
pretty
didn't
good.
even have a class on it.
Okay.
He has a namespace and no class.
Okay.
Also, he tagged it as C# but wrote it in diff syntax. Like, it's all sorts of wrong.
You have high standards.
This won't
I'm not gonna
compile. Like,
Okay, it's not perfect.
So a iEquality comparer. Alright, I want to look at it in real syntax, not IMO syntax. iEquality comparer of t says equals operates on t question mark.
Yeah, so you're good.
And then iComparer similarly says that the comparer must deal with nulls even if the t calls itself non-nullable. Okay, so I think all the question marks are right.
Yes.
If we're looking for a quick one, I think we could look at the sequence reader. I would advise probably rejecting the proposal. So hopefully that's easy.
Try advanced 2 or consumed sequence.
Sorry, consumed sequence.
Okay.
I actually haven't looked at the try advanced 2. So sequence reader today already has like unread sequence. It also exposes sequence and it also exposes position. It's built on top of a read-only sequence, which also has a slice API. So if you wanted to get the consume sequence already, you could just call reader.sequence slice sequence start position effectively. So, you know, this is of course a lot easier than that, but the question is like, why do you need it? Personally, I haven't needed this API, so that's part of my reason for not wanting it. And then if you scroll down a little bit, they offer some example code where they're like, well, what if I have a try read to method and then I want to like read, scroll up one more comment. No, maybe that is right. Sorry, scroll down. Yeah, the issue here, right, is like they're like, oh, in this case, something could call try read multiple times, and then after you call it, you can just look at the consume sequence, which is true if you created the sequence reader just for the call to your read API. But at that point, like, why is the read API not providing like an out parameter or something along those lines? That is your consume sequence.
Yeah, I agree. This one should be asking for the position before it called try read to.
Yeah,
because it's over returning. The consume sequence is too much.
Right, and if you keep scrolling, like someone else basically makes that point. And it's like, look, this debug assert would fail, right? Which is basically what they're saying. Anyway, I don't think we should accept it. The best way to put it, I guess, is like you can already achieve this with slightly more code. It doesn't seem like it's a super common need, and it might be prone to misusage.
Like, I'm not. Is the consume sequence everything up until this point, or is it the sequence that was consumed by the previous operation?
It's everything, I think. It's literally everything that's been consumed since you've constructed the sequence reader.
Does sequence reader even guarantee that that information sticks around?
Well, it, I believe, is like, let me pull up the source code again. I mean, it's just built on top of a read-only sequence, and it's itself a ref struct, so yeah, probably. Like, it's not living for long, but you could still call like multiple parse, APIs or whatever, or on the sequence before you exit the stack frame or whatever you're doing with it.
Oh, does the sequence property return the original sequence?
It does, yeah.
I see. Okay. So yeah, you can get it yourself if you really want.
Right, like you could write your own extension method that does this, like with just the information that's exposed via public properties on the sequence reader. You don't even have to know its constructor parameters or anything, because, like you said, it's reflected in the property. So, I'd say no thanks to this proposal.
I agree.
Yeah, I can't think of a valid use for it.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm sure you could come up with a use case where it's like not incorrect, but like still, like, not completely broken, but like there's probably better ways.
Yeah.
And like slice is pretty efficient already. Like, yeah, that extension method that could easily take the current position in the current sequence and give you the consume sequence would be fine if you really need that information.
Got there in 2. All right, and that's time.
Cool.
So we definitely did a number on things marked as future. Reminder, we're running out of time for 10, so if there are things people are hoping to get into 10, you should have your proposals flowing. Otherwise, I guess either way, thanks everyone for joining us online, and we'll see you back here next week, same .NET time, same .NET channel. And until then, laters. Yep, I speak slang.